Okay, we're going to continue working on what I call the vocabulary of soul, and and for those of you who maybe haven't gotten this message yet, remember you don't have a soul. You are a soul. That's a totally different way of looking at it. You're a soul that has a body, a mind, a heart, a personality. The unbelievable diversity of personalities you meet. If you know the Enneagram, you got to know that there's not just nine kinds of people in the Bollywood squares here or in the world. There's an unbelievable variety. Well, you have a personality, but you're not that. You're something deeper. And so just keep reminding people, I think, you have to be reminded every 24 hours at least. I'll try to do it once a week. You don't have a soul. You have a car. I mean, you're going to have a pen or you're going to have a MacBook Air, but you are a soul that enfolds all that. Now, an interesting bit of vocabulary there. Because people say, "Well, what is it really? This soul?" Well, it is. It is that. It is the consciousness of your body. Body has a consciousness. That's the top of the Enneagram. If you know the Enneagram, the 8, 9, and 1 are the body types. There's a certain body consciousness there, and then the 2, 3s, and 4s, there's a certain kind of heart consciousness, relational consciousness, and then for the 5, 6, and 7, there's a mind consciousness. Nobody, people say, "Well, I'm a body type or whatever." Well, nobody is. We're all three, you see. So the soul is the sum total. It's a unified field of consciousness that we are. That's what we are. And when we're going to have a couple teachings, and the second one will lead us to a heart practice. The heart is key there, mind, body, and then the heart is sort of the way that you can align those consciousnesses, unify them and align them and get them all working. Then you're really cooking with gas, as they used to say. We don't talk about cooking with gas anymore. but the heart is it's among other things, it's intelligent. It aligns all three consciousnesses, which is rare, but that's what we're shooting for. And then, boy, then you're growing towards becoming who you can be. So that's just a little thing I try to remind you of all the time. Now, if, I want to go back to the screensaver just for a minute, if I can. I've got to move this around a little bit, the technical part of things. I'm going to go back just to the screensaver. Yeah, because I want people came in late or who have not seen the opening video, the opening image. It's from an old woodcut kind of engraving, probably from New England. But it's this boat, these huge little rowboat, a few people in it, and then the huge waves. It's a picture that'll sort of give us a visual of what the topic for today, which is overwhelm. Challenges and even overwhelm, and how does the ego handle it, as opposed to how does the soul handle it? Okay, how does it handle? How does the ego is primarily connected with the mind? You see, although it's connected, it works with all the things, but it's the childish way. The ego was what got us through our kid life crisis. And it should be less and less important, and the unified field of consciousness is meant to take over. But what do you do in this kind of situation? The guy in the back of the boat doesn't even have a tiller. There's a couple of people with oars in the water, which is an important image, by the way. And then you see this seagull attacking the guy in the back, and seagulls are I don't like seagulls. So this is where we are in the new millennium, in the 21st century. It's sort of overwhelming. We've been talking about it, and if we haven't been talking about it, your whole body, mind, heart, soul complex is aware of the fact that that we're in a kind of very difficult period for human beings on this planet, and there we've been there before. Okay, we've been there before. So I want to read into the for our sacred text. I got two poems that are sacred texts for me, and they both occurred in the first 11 years of this millennium. The first one was it's a text from Hopi elders that they delivered on June 8th, 2000. And it was, they managed to survive our attempts to wipe them out in this country. The indigenous people, the native people are still here. And we need their wisdom. And this was the Hopi elders they felt we were going into a new era, and that we had to have a new wisdom. So I'm going to read you that first, and then we'll comment on it. And then I'll read you a second bit of wisdom. Yeah, this was right at the beginning. You remember Y2K, those of you who are around are old enough, we were freaking out even before it happened. We thought all the computers would go down. And I was there on Christmas, on New Year's Eve, out at the monastery. And there was more people than ever. You couldn't find a place. People were in the abbey praying that they were going to live through their computers dying or whatever. But none of that ever happened. But other things happened. So this is the prophecy from the Hopi elders, and the title of this is "We Are the Ones We've Been Waiting For." You've been telling people that this is the 11th hour. Now you must go back and tell the people that this is the hour, and there are things to be considered. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in right relation? Where is your water? Know your garden. It's time to speak your truth. Create your community. Be good to each other. And do not look outside yourself for your leader. Then he clasped his hands together, smiled, and said, "This could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they're being torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above the water. And I say, see who is there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey comes to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. We are the ones we've been waiting for. I want to go back through that and just highlight a couple of things. Because when you hear something once and you don't have the text, and you can find this text, you could just Google, Hopi Prophecy 200, and you can get the text. I just want to highlight some things. These questions at the beginning are very much Native Americans questions. Where are you living? What are you doing? What are your relationships? Are you in a right relationship? And then finally, where is your water? Water is life. Air is life, but water is life. And we're seeing the effects of the planet being out of kilter, as much our doing as anything, and how water is affecting people. From tsunamis to people don't have clean water. In Haiti, 50% of the kids die between uh, birth in the age of 5 because of polluted water. And that's true all over the world. Where is your water? Know your garden. There's a lot you can just pull a lot of that. You know your inner life is your garden as well as the garden outside, because we found out in COVID, uh, so the food supply thing is interrupted. Know your garden, both inside and outside. It's time to speak your truth. And if in soul speak, um, the heart knows the truth. My mind knows a lot of things, but when it really gets down to on the important stuff, my mind sort of goes one way or another, and it's a little bit dodgy, if not really. I can bullshit myself totally, and I have in my life, not to the betterment of myself or my wife or the family or people I know. The mind can be a sort of bullshit machine. There's people still running around saying the election was stolen, things like that. There's news organizations that are just. It's time to speak your truth. We have a crisis of truth in this country politically, but also just for our own hearts to be able to speak the truth. When we write after the sitting, that was Merton's great way of, he would sit and just listen to all the voices and try to discern the voice from the heart, the voice of truth, and then he'd start writing. And sometimes he would have to write through a lot of blah blah to get to one line. One of Merton's great lines, Thomas Merton's great lines, is, "We make ourselves real by telling the truth." We got to get real here. So these guys know what they're talking about, and they say this could be a good time. That's hard to believe when you see all the stuff going on. But I go back to times in the past, 14th century, for instance. The Black Plague started and was going to last for 400 years until we discovered penicillin. Okay, but in 1400s, the plague killed a third of the people in England, and so it was a very dark time. But some of the greatest spiritual lights flourished in that time. Chaucer wrote all the Canterbury Tales. The Cloud of Unknowing was written. Julian of Norwich had her showings and was writing that. I mean, these are three great lights in the middle of the darkness. So he says, this could be a good time. There is a river flowing now very fast. So the image of the river, it's just life as we know it. It's so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. And man, if you don't realize they're preaching fear all the time as we go into 2024, when you're in a campaign season in this country, it's 24 hours of fear, of the other side winning, of course, but it's just fear, fear, fear. Fear sells. Fear gets people's attention, you see. But this could be a good time too. But things are moving very fast. We don't have a lot of time to work with some of these big problems, like the planet is the biggest problem. You can see how it's just resetting, and in the resetting, organized human life can get wiped out. We're seeing that. Okay. But this could be a good time. The river's moving very fast. It's great and swift, and there are those who will be afraid. They will hold on to the shore. That's the ego's approach all the time, is hold on, get small, protect yourself. But the people who hold on to the shore, they will feel like they're being torn apart and will suffer greatly. No, the river has a destination. This isn't just random. What's going on in the world is not random. The elders say we must let go of the shore. This is a very interesting image. We must let go of the shore, push off into the middle of the river, keep our eyes open and our head above the water. Now that takes some courage. And I say, see who is there in the middle of the river with you and celebrate. The idea that this is a time to celebrate. At this time in history, we're to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. Lovely line. For the moment we do, our spiritual growth and journey will come to a halt. Now, this next sentence is one to remember if you remember nothing else. The time of the lone wolf is over. We have a lone wolf economy, which we spread to the rest of the world. I mean, I'm the only one in it, and I'm getting what I want, and the hell with the rest of you. You know, it's the Marlboro Man economy. It's a plantation economy, and we spread it to the rest of the world. And the time of the lone wolf is over. They were saying this in 2000. We got to change our whole view that we're not in this alone, and we're not this, brave individual who's going to make his own life. And, people say, oh, I pulled myself up from my own bootstraps, blah, I did all this on my own. Nobody does it on their own. Everybody has all kinds of connections. So the time of the lone wolf is over, is realizing that it's a relationship, a connectivity that we need to create. Gather yourselves. Here we are, 30-some people. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner, and again, and in celebration. That's exactly what we do at Heart to Heart. We're a community that gathers in a sacred manner. We have our ritual that we go through, and it is a kind of celebration. The exit music is always somehow a celebration. We have it should be a celebration. And then he says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. We got to stop waiting for somebody to pull our fat out of the fire here, don't we? We keep saying, oh, well, technology will figure out something, or maybe if, the Republicans might say, oh, we just could elect Trump or Biden. No, we are the ones we're waiting for. We have to start a kind of evolution revolution. And I tell you, telling the truth is the beginning. It's in these times, it's a revolutionary act to tell the truth to yourself, which is what we're primarily doing when we write after meditation. We're telling the truth of our experience right now on the page as best we can. Yeah. So that's one. Now, 11 years later, this was written. And thanks to one of my good friends, she sent me this illustrated, and I have it hanging up in the kitchen, and it's called Wage Peace. It was written by Judith Hill on 9/11. So now we're 11 years into the September 11th, 9/11. I remember exactly where I was. I was still teaching school. In a day or so, once it was a very special time. I wrote about it in the last week's thing. It was a time where business stopped, everything stopped, and people were helping one another. But it wasn't too long before we had our president up on a pile with a bullhorn saying, we're coming to get these people who did this. And, that was the attitude. We're going to wipe out some people here. And then he also said, by the way, if you want to really do something individually, go shopping. That was our response. Go buy some shoes. I think he said, go shopping. That's our strength. It's not our strength. So Judith Hill wrote this, and there's a practice in this that we'll follow up today. We'll do a special practice, but this is called Wage Peace. It's a beautiful illustration. She said, wage peace with your breath. Breathe in firemen and rubble. Breathe out whole buildings and flocks of red-winged blackbirds. Breathe in terrorists, and breathe out sleeping children and freshly mown fields. Breathe in confusion, and breathe out maple trees. Breathe in the fallen, and breathe out lifelong friendships intact. Wage peace with your listening. Hearing sirens, pray loud. Remember your tools, flower seeds, clothespins, clean rivers. Make soup. Play music. Memorize the words for thank you in 3 languages. Learn to knit and make a hat. This is one of my favorite lines. Think of chaos as dancing raspberries. Imagine grief as the outbreath of beauty or the gesture of a fish. Swim for the other side. Wage peace. Never has the world seemed so fresh and precious. Have a cup of tea and rejoice. Active as if armistice has already arrived. Celebrate today. You can hear the echo of the Hopis in there. Judith Hill, 9/11/2001. Yeah. Breathe in confusion and breathe out maple trees. Breathe in the fallen and breathe out lifelong friendships intact. We waged war, 20 years of it. Anybody born at that time, young people who are, 23 or so, they've never known peace. Actually, anybody my age who was born in 1949, there's always been some kind of war going on. But this is a whole other way of dealing with it. And both of these texts are saying, despite the darkness, human hope is based on the instinct at the deepest level of reality that some intimate kindness in this universe holds sway. One of my local young friends here, he stayed after on a Thursday night when we used to come and gather for this kind of a thing on Thursday nights in person. And he said, could I stay after? And I thought he had questions about his girlfriend. And he said, you always talk about grace. He says, I don't know what that you're talking about. Because he had a couple of lovely hippies for parents and no any kind of formal, anything. And I said, well, grace is sort of the permanent climate of kindness. And then we talked last week about blessing. Some people are uncomfortable even with the term. They think only priests bless. I'm through with that. No, blessing is a form of grace. And especially in Judith Hill's poems, everything was a blessing. You breathe in a disaster and you send back with your out breath. There's something to help, you see. And when we show this kind of compassion or kindness for one another, we are entraining blessing. That's a word that's a modern word, but to entrain means it's that thing I was saying where you align everything. You align your mind, your body with the heart. And when they're all in line, you're entrained. And so, to show compassion and kindness, which is the essence of this whole climate of grace. Rumi in the 13th century, it was the time of all the Crusades and much, it was a dark time in the Middle East, Crusades. And he said, most people see this time as a time of sorrowing. He said, and he did too on one level, but then he was the grief master. He turned to sorrow. He said, but mostly I see life and the universe as graceful. What of you, especially in a time that was so dark and personally, for Muslim people, these waves of invaders kept coming, fighting over whatever, and we had 20 years of that in the Middle East and we're no good for it. What if we had waged peace? So you got to start waging peace inside. There's a mess around you, the mess you're caught up in now. You love your work, but the structure of the organization is like for shit, and it doesn't, it's just there. Everybody has some level, or you're really happy you finally got it together in your life, and then you get a diagnosis. There's always a challenge, which is good because we grow in challenging times. You don't grow in your comfort zone, see? And so we should learn how to greet these challenges and how to, in a way, wage peace. Don't wait for the governments to declare peace. In the midst of war, you can be peace and kindness and compassion. This is another image entirely, both from the Hopis. And they both had swimming in the river. Swim to the middle of the river is is the middle way of the Buddhist. It's the narrow way of Jesus. It's the extremes where we are very polarized thinking in this country. The extremes are easy. It's easy to go to the edge. It's hard to find the middle, you see. The middle is to find peace in the midst of conflict. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, despite what everybody who is a 9 on the Enneagram hopes for. I'm just going to get everything, I'll get all the furniture in place. There'll be no conflict. Well, that's not what peace is. It's being able to wage it. See, so those of you who are veterans of this work, who maybe were here on the first time we came in the midst of COVID, in the midst of being locked down, we came in with the very first thing, and you maybe sense from Judith Hill's thing, breathe in this, breathe back something else, that she's, if not consciously, she's talking about the Tibetan heart practice, the healing practice called Tonglen. And she really, Pema Chodron really believed that this is going to be the practice for this time where there's so much to be healed, and war is not going to heal anything. And you can't war with your own self, war with your family. There is difficulty, there is conflict, but you breathe in the conflict and you breathe back peace. That's the practice of Tonglen. And I think on the very first meeting we did that. I started introducing it right in the meeting because we were all freaked out. We all were dealing with a lot of pain and confusion. Some of us lost our jobs, lost people to COVID already. And so I want to just every 6 months or so, I go back and formally introduce it to the group, just so you know, this is a practice for now. Okay, so Tonglen, the words are 2 Tibetan words, and they just mean basically sending and receiving. So you breathe in whatever the mess is. This is a way you can bless the mess of your life, or bless the mess of the world, or your daughter, or your friends, or the country. Doesn't matter. You can work on any scale you want. It's good to start on your own life and your own scale, but you breathe in the things that are difficulties. You breathe in the things that are overwhelming. And the way it works is you breathe it in, and it goes to what the Tibetans call the Buddha heart, the perfect heart, the heart that can transform anything. And this image is of transformation in the cauldron where the alchemist would, you might be a Paulo Coelho fan, you talk about the alchemy happens in a container that you raise, that you can put lead or shit even, and then by the process you can turn out gold, so, and in the contemplative practices, the heart is that. So we breathe into the heart whatever conflict we're working with, and on the out breath you send back to yourself or to somebody else. If you're doing it for somebody else, you send back some relief. Now this gets you out of this practice, actually gets you out of the conundrum of knowing what to pray for, or even you don't even have to believe in prayer really, because our egos aren't up to this task. We're bypassing the ego because the ego thinks this is crazy. Well, why would you breathe in darkness? Why would you breathe in pain? No, stay away from that. So the ego is always going to resist this practice, but the ego doesn't know what to pray for. People say, oh, well, you're my thoughts and prayers, but in most cases, they don't know what they're saying. And I don't know if my friend is just cracking up in a relationship, I don't really know what to send. This doesn't know what to send, you see. So when you just breathe in her pain right now, whatever it is, and when you send back, you can always on the out breath send love. Love is just like a diamond. There's all these facets, and I don't know anybody that doesn't need to be loved when they're in difficulty. So there's a book by a Tibetan master. It's called Love on Every Breath. So you're cool. You can always send back love on the out breath. And the Tibetans they get a little bit more into it. You know, they have dark in, black in, white out, black in, white out, uh, and that's the transformation. But all the Tibetan practitioners I know, and I take this seriously too. You know, sometimes you take in dark red, and it's just the way it is, and sometimes you send in light blue. It's a very fluid practice, but you're sending them back in some form of love that they need. You know, whether it's just even to have somebody else in the world. This sticks in my mind. When I went to Haiti the first time years ago, almost 4 decades ago now, and it was all new to me, and I was just reeling all the time to see what was going on. But it was something I'll never forget. It was we came out of the mass on Sunday, and this you know, this is really strange when white people come in there and they know we were from the parish that's been supporting them, but it's special, but sort of strange. It was all strange to me. You know, the mass was almost 2 hours long. It seemed like 20 minutes though. It was amazing. So I came out and I was still like, you know, just like freaked out by the whole thing in a good way. And this old woman came up to. I was with Janine, who's a Belgian woman there, and she could translate. This old woman came up, and she was walking on just a stick that had rags on it. That was her crutch, and she had a goiter about as big as a softball right here. I found out later that it's just not from having iodized salt. You can, you know, which is in everything that we eat. But so she had this gourd, and she was ancient. God knows, maybe she was 55. You know, Haitians age a lot faster. So she comes up to me and she starts speaking this Creole, and tears are in her eyes, and then so Janine is talking to her in Creole, and then I said, well, what did she say? And she said, thank you for coming. It really helps just that we know that somebody can take back what's the suffering we're going through here and tell somebody else. The fact that one other person can even know you're not suffering alone. And if nothing else, when you breathe in and breathe out for somebody else at a distance, it doesn't matter. Living or dead, it doesn't matter. You can pray for people who have passed away, who might, you just feel they're having difficulty, and they can pray for you too this way, according to the Tibetans. So it's really free. It's freeing. And so you can do something, even if it's just to breathe in a few times. And so that's why I'm going to lead you through just the 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes. We'll start with Tonglen, and you could stay with it, or then you could just go back to just your normal sitting practice, which we'll start with. We'll start just coming into the body and settling down, and then I'll just make a little mention of to guide you into it. You might already know who you need to um, who you need to help. You could do Tonglen for the whole country, or for Ukraine, or for the planet. It can be as big or as small as you want.